Great. Sorry for that, that break in transmission. So good day, everybody, once again, and welcome to the CIO Masterclass, third edition of the CIO African Leadership Series. We thank you so much for joining virtually today from across Africa and the world. We're excited that you're here. My name is Ifeanyi Frank Ogochukwu, a CIO of CIOs and the program director for this CIO Masterclass. I'll be your co-host for the next hour and a half. I'm not alone. Basically, I'm going to be co-hosting with another formidable colleague. He's an ICT for development and public policy expert right now using technology in the agri space. Nixon Mageta. He's a senior program officer, digital systems and solutions for Agra in Nairobi, Kenya. Nixon, just say hello to the people. Thank you.
Hello and welcome.
All right, just a little bit about CIO Masterclass Africa. We're a premium African CIO and IT leadership platform established for the promotion and advancement of technology leadership in Africa. The platform also is geared towards creating wholesome African ICT leadership stories and solutions across the entire value chain, technology value chain, through masterclasses like we're having today, insightful conversations, thought leadership discussions, collaborative engagements, interviews, interaction and relevant forums, showcasing unique African technology excellence. The platform aims to host distinguished captains of industry, just like we're having today as well. I mean, Mr. Chinenye has been in there and there all over the place. CIOs, professionals, technocrats, academics, organizations, and regional agencies. So the third series of the CIO African Leadership basically is going to focus on African CIOs and IT leaders navigating through the crisis, the COVID-19 crisis. What's their digital journey about during and post-COVID-19? Our distinguished guest speaker and panelists have been interrogating this team and exploring the impact of COVID-19 on organizations and whether CIOs rose up to the occasion to strategically transition the organizations through the disruptive crisis to a place of resilience and sustainability. Furthermore, what are the lessons learned and how can CIOs position themselves to navigate similar crises in future? But before we delve into the conversation, a few housekeeping. This meeting is basically broadcast in English and French. So please, you can actually select your preferred language, either English or French, from the interpretation button on your status bar. Please kindly mute your mic if you're not asked to speak. And we expect questions from all the participants, questions and comments on the chat box and the Q&A box. Put your questions and comments because our distinguished guests are going to take your questions when the time comes. So just drop your question on the chat box and on the Q&A and your comments on the chat box. Please tweet about this event with the hashtag CIO Masterclass Africa and tag our lead speaker and panelists as well. We're going to be introducing them in time to come. However, before we get into that, next thing will take us through a quick poll to set the tone for our conversation. Please, also at the end of the webinar, we'll have a very short survey we need you to fill up for us. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the third edition of the African Leadership CIO series. Listen, please, the poll.
Thank you very much, Frank, for this. I am just launching a poll so that we are all able to, I don't know if all of us can see the poll.
Yes, we can.
Yeah, so we want to just get to know more about the people who are logging in. Are you from the public sector, or do you agree that your organization technology infrastructure will be prepared? So just answer that poll, and then in a little bit, as you continue to answer the poll, we will then see the results and beam the polls out of you. So I think you should now start responding to the poll.
Nixon, when you click, do you see it? Because I'm trying to click. I can
publish the poll.
Sorry?
I'm saying
the poll.
Yeah, I've opened the poll. Can everybody see it?
Yeah, it's visible.
Yes.
It's just that for me to select, we're not seeing any reaction, but we still, I'm not able to click on private or public.
Oh, you're not able to click on private or public?
Yes, maybe, I don't know if you can, there's some rights you need to provide.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So, Mr. Nixon, you need to republish the poll from the start. What we're seeing here is the results. It closed before anyone could answer.
Okay, interesting. So, you know what, we're going to get back to that poll in a bit. Let's just get on with the program. We're going to do the poll in a bit. So,
is that okay now?
Is it?
Yes, it's good right now.
Okay,
great. So let's go ahead.
Okay.
So let's just try and answer the poll in the next three minutes. It's just about 3 or 4 questions, I guess.
I think as we answer the poll, we can go on and introduce our guests, and I will leave this to Frank. Frank, can you go ahead?
Okay, great. So, yeah, so while we're answering the poll, I'm just going to introduce our lead speaker for today, so that we can actually get on with the program. There's a lot to share today, basically. So, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished participants, our lead speaker for today is the founding managing director of the multiple award-winning technology solutions pioneer, Infographics in Nigeria. He has almost 30 years of an eclectic career in technology, strategy, software development, marketing communications, digital design, change and transformation in both public and private sectors, with focus on education, health, and governance. As a matter of fact, Infographics became the first African company to be a 2-time Microsoft Worldwide Award Partner of the Year, 4-time winner regional awards, pioneer Microsoft Academic Services Partner, responsible for over 300 partners in 7 countries in West Africa, and leading exponent of enterprise collaboration solutions in West Africa. Our lead speaker also has worked in Microsoft Corporation as General Manager, Anglophone West Africa, overseeing a 7-country portfolio as a member of the Microsoft EMEA Executive Management Team. He left in 2009 to start up and to pursue his vision of a borderless Africa as the managing partner of Grand Central and the founding lead partner of IS Consulting, a boutique enterprise development services firm that nurtures young entrepreneurs in its multinodal IX Infinity Hubs. He's a certified Foundation Rainforest Innovation Architect and member, Board of Trustees, Global Rainforest Makers Network. He's the president of the Institute of Software Practitioners of Nigeria, ISPON. He's a fellow and the immediate past deputy president of Nigerian Computer Society. He's a member of the Computer Professional Registration Council of Nigeria and a member of African ICT Alliance. He has served in several boards as chairman, Ola Makias Foundation, a mental health care provider and advocacy group, board member of Bayan 3 Capital Partners, a business process outsourcing and procurement firm. He's also a key contributor to youth development initiatives such as Stephen Adams Social Reformation Foundation, the Anthill Cultural Career Center, the Mentor Project, Jacob's Ladder, and Innovation Support Network, ISN Hubs. Mr. Chidenya is also a mentor for the Founders Institute and an advisor to Startup School Study Group, Port Harcourt, and a founding board member of Retail Council of Nigeria. Ladies and gentlemen, help me welcome Mr. Chidenya Mbauzoku to take us through the leadership thought presentation this afternoon. Mr. Chidenya, over to you.
Thank you, Ogochukwu. My apologies. I'm clearing my throat.
Thank you for having me. It's really a pleasure to be here. And again, congratulations on this really important events that you've put together. I cannot think of anything that is maybe I have attended this year that could be more important than this event that you have put together. So my congratulations to you and the rest of the team. I ask for your forgiveness. I came out of a hotel, 3 days in a hotel with a really bad cough that I've tried to suppress throughout the day. Indeed, last night, I decided I was going to do a recording, just in case, a voice recording, just in case I couldn't talk to you. I hope you can hear me, and I hope you can forgive my occasional clearing of the throat. And
yeah, very clear, yeah, very clear, sir.
Very much. And also, this is actually tea, so just in case you guys think it's something else, what you see at the bottom are tea leaves. If you don't mind, I will occasionally sip to keep the throat a little bit clear. Thank you once again, Ogachukwu and team. So it's really, really lovely to have Africa having this conversation. And I don't know how one can possibly overemphasize the importance of this meeting. I don't think it's possible to overemphasize it. I just know that, you know, given where we're coming from, the kind of environments that we're coming out of, the challenges that we faced, the one group that people tend to overlook, but it's going to be the most critical in the years ahead, is actually technology, and most importantly, the CIOs. This is a role that didn't exist when we started our own businesses 25 years ago. And over time has come to become, I think, maybe the central role, and is still to a very large extent underestimated in terms of the value that it brings to the organization. If we do not get it right, then I can assure you that Africa itself will probably get lost. And this is a very critical moment in our history. It's a critical moment in Africa's history as a whole, but even more so, I mean, for the whole world, but even more so for Africa. And I'll try to explore that in a few screens, if you don't mind my Ogachukwu, going into that traditional PowerPoint mode. Being ex-Microsoft, there really isn't much choice but to do PowerPoint. It's it's become a way for us to actually capture our thoughts and maybe even share. So I'll just share a few screens and just kind of like help me coordinate my thinking. There's there's a write-up that accompanies this presentation, which I'll make available to you a bit later. Excuse me. So this is what really captures my thoughts, really. I was so completely taken by this statement by this Indian writer and activist, Arundhati Roy. And she told us very, very early in the game, she said to us, listen, we are in a crisis. It's unprecedented. Something has to be done. And I don't want to paraphrase. I just want you to read the paragraphs that are on the screen for yourself and just think about what it is that she's saying. And imagine yourself in that context. For those who aren't on screens that can actually read this, the first statement says, our minds are still racing back and forth, longing for a return to normality, trying to stitch our future to our past and refusing to acknowledge the rupture. But the rupture exists. And in the midst of this terrible despair, it offers us a chance to rethink. Then most importantly, nothing could be worse than a return to normality. That is just too scary for most people to even contemplate. The idea that what we were used to in the past, we're never going to go back to it. And yet this is the opportunity that is laid out before us. And she goes on and she says, historically, pandemics have forced humans to break with the past and imagine their world anew. This one, which is actually the worst in 100 years, she says, is no different. It is a portal, a gateway between one world and the next. We can choose to walk through it with little luggage, ready to imagine another world, and most importantly, ready to fight for it. The key warriors in this battle is the CIO. And it's understated, maybe even less understood. And this is one of the challenges that we really need to get up to. How do we kind of like avert our minds to the importance of the CIO's role in helping the world through this pandemic and helping Africa into the next possibility? And I just kind of like, love this little picture that there is a door opening, but it's strange. Some people see it as a door closing. The CIO's role must be to invert that thinking, to create the possibility that this door that has opened is a door through which we must all go. And how do we navigate through it? So I just, I feel that, we are at that point where the lockdown is slowly easing and everybody's rushing out into the space and trying to do something and trying to catch up and trying to close gaps. But maybe, just maybe, this is really the time for us to sit back and think about what is this world that we want to create, rather than going back into trying to create the kind of things, recreate or stabilize the environments, whether it's a community or it's an enterprise or even ourselves as individuals. What is it that we must do? What should we really do? We have to think about it. And with all that time that we had at home, our minds were crowded by the ideas, just sheer survival, and carrying the burden of all the tragedies that were occurring around us. And I'm not too sure that most of us paused long enough to say, what comes next? And how do we architect this? So as we go into this new period, we are going to be challenged to create this new normal. The new normal shouldn't be something that happened to us. It's got to be something that we have decided intentionally to create. And in doing so, we must be able to understand exactly what are the dynamics of the current environment, how do we shape it, and what really are we shaping it towards? It's not going to be something that, even now around you can see people slowly going back into offices, children going back into schools, airports are slowly coming back to life. And you're seeing this COVID scenario, right? It's almost like playing out like before. People go to airports, where airports, the airline industry has been hit by over 40% reduction in travel. So the airports are not as congested as before. The idea of moving from one place to another for meetings, just to connect as human beings is still there. But how do we cope with that? And what does that actually mean for us as businesses, as individuals, as communities, and as countries? How does that actually translate to this new normal? What should that new normal look like? Are we going to retreat and stay in our homes? How about our schools? Many of our schools in Africa were very similar to the pictures that you see here. Overcrowded schools, classroom sizes that were supposed to take 30 were taking 90, some were over 100, teachers were overworked, and yet they were struggling to deliver education as a fundamental to allow children themselves, equip themselves with the capacity to be able to be productive in the environment. Then came COVID, and COVID said distancing. And distancing meant nice spaced out schools like this with children able to learn in environments that are healthy and safe. But how real is this for the majority of Africa, that children will sit in these environments? How do we translate from this to this? Even at a tertiary level, we went to school in this environment, and today we're at home. And as you can see, this young lady, predominantly we're seeing in many countries, the education lag. When COVID came, almost 1.5 billion children were thrown out of school. In most countries across the world, they're still grappling with the concept of how do they get back into school. And most students, even the tertiary level institutions, most of them lost a year. Some are even losing up to 2 years. And they still have to deal with hybrid learning, an environment that didn't exist in 2019, and suddenly in 2021 has to be their way of life. How about our community? The things we used to do, hug each other at church, struggle with Lagos traffic through this incredible melee that you see out here. And how do we transit to this? Transportation distant from each other, people not crowding with each other. I think what we're going to see is that this post-COVID-19 reality is actually not reality for Africa. Whereas it may be possible in many parts of the world, in Africa, all these images that you see on the right-hand side are really just a dream, what should be. These are the things that have been prescribed for us as stuff that we should do, the environments that we should get used to, but what is our current reality? That's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. Even as they've gone back into sports and they filled out all the stadia, what are we seeing? How about in the offices where we had people crowding together, sitting around desks and collaborating? Now we've got people remoting into work. To what extent is this possible, and how prepared is Africa for this? And now we've literally, and I don't want to get into the details of how the different countries have managed this, but in reality, are we really managing COVID? Have we successfully managed COVID? The tragedies continue to unfold, and even in a country like Nigeria, the numbers are spiking once again. That post-COVID-19 has not yet landed. What would it look like? Already we've been told that we should prepare ourselves for yet another pandemic. And yet we have seen the collapse of social systems, the collapse of healthcare systems, the collapse of infrastructure. We've seen huge challenges in terms of people being able to even eat. We've had issues around food security, income security. We've had major issues around mental health. Africa was in crisis. Our normal was not what it needed to be. And now we have to find this new normal. So rushing back cannot be an option. We have to think forward and think into the future, start to put the pieces together and understand. And in this thought process, it will be technology that will make the difference. I'm sorry, just to, Rachiko has given a bit of a background around myself and where I've come from. But it's kind of like, so I won't spend too much time on this, but I just kind of like want to think back to what it was like in 1978. I think most of the people on this call probably were specks in the eyes of their parents at the time. But this is when I first saw a computer. I was a young kid and I saw this computer and I just fell in love with the thing. I just saw this blinking cursor and I just said, oh my goodness, what's going on here? It was like a TV, but you could play with the TV. And we moved on from there to where we are now. It wasn't a surprise looking back for me that early exposure led me to establish infographics. My continuing concern was always going to be around the human to machine interface. How do we create more and more interactive and immersive and collaborative and efficient environments for using technology to enhance the human experience and enhance human growth? And this is what our business has been about. And all the awards that we've won has been about that. Excuse me. At the beginning, when we set out infographics, people were laughing at me. They felt, the guy was talking about multimedia. Multimedia was really about connecting speakers to computers that we used to build. We used to assemble from parts that we buy from Computer Village. And then we attached speakers to them. We bought sound cards and things like that. And I was setting up a software company, but everybody said it was like an advertising agency or it was just a gaming company of some sort. They didn't understand multimedia. But today we live in the reality of that multimedia. And why I bring this up is that for me, I needed to be a little bit crazy. And crazy from other people's perspective. Crazy to be able to think about the future and think about the place where few people had actually seen, and aspire to move myself and my company and those who I could move with me into that environment. And all the time, I recall people like Christopher Columbus, who quote unquote discovered North America, or the Americas as the case may be. And I kind of wonder, here is a guy coming out of Europe, getting into a ship at a time when everybody said the world was flat, and paddling away, heading towards a horizon that he knew for sure. The scientists told him that at the end of that journey, he would fall off and they would all die. That must be some crazy guy to get up and go. But before Columbus even got to America, Africans had already gotten there. And I just quickly want, on this one point, I know it's going to be slightly contentious, but go look for a book called They Came Before Columbus by Ivan van Sertima. They Came Before Columbus. He talks about and expands the ideas that came into the discussions of the books, the Ra and the Kontiki expedition, and demonstrates clearly that in Central America, Africans had arrived centuries before Columbus did. Those were crazy people. I have no idea what they were smoking or what they were drinking, but for someone to leave a continent, go into the high seas, heading for a space that you didn't know what lay at the end, except the near certain death. How much food do you put inside that vessel? How much water do you put inside that vessel? What would you see at the end? And how do you deal with the monsters? This is almost very much, to me, where we are today. We're at the edge of yesterday and looking into tomorrow. And we have no idea what days up ahead of us, but we have to go forward. And that's what we have to do. I got into Microsoft, and eventually when I started working there, the understanding of what it was that they were doing was just really incredible. That somebody would think about a future possible and everyone would laugh. I mean, people at the end of this world famously said that computers would never be anything but server type mini kind of computers. And here was this geeky kid saying, well, we're going to build this and we're going to put this and everyone is going to have one in his house and home. There will be one on every desk. And here we are 35 years later, and it's one of the world's biggest companies and has been helpful in spawning a revolution. What sparks that vision? What is it that enables an individual or a set of individuals to see beyond their present and imagine a world that is, and then actually work to bring that into being? This is the fundamental role of the CIO. The CIO must be a visionary. And to be a visionary, the CIO must himself or herself be somewhat crazy. People are going to say it is impossible to you more times than you can ever remember. And you just have to keep coming back and saying, it's going to happen, it's going to happen. But for you to have that confidence in your vision, you need to have assembled the data, assembled and studied the landscape, looked towards what that future could possibly be like, and start to build the teams to take you to that place. I keep thinking, how do we get to the point of innovation? Africa over the last decade and a half has shown through the growth of startups, the startup ecosystem, that we do have the capacity to innovate and to innovate in a manner that will be accepted and even contribute fundamentally to the global movement. We've seen large companies come up. We've seen brilliant organizations start from nothing and grow into unicorns. We already understand that our history and our past is rich with innovation. We also recognize that historically there was a time when we fell into this space, this middle world, where we could no longer innovate. It appeared that we couldn't innovate, and we all fell into this space of importing things and buying what we didn't produce. This new world that lies ahead of us offers us a huge opportunity to recover our past and to accelerate into the future. I believe very strongly that the internet and internet technologies were made for Africa. Because at the heart of the internet lies community. At the heart of the internet lies collaboration. At the heart of the internet and its related technologies lies an agility and a flexibility, and as well as a very powerful courage and an impulse to take control of your environment in collaboration with other people to create new things. And that's why humanity began from here and spread across the globe. Today, we are at the cusp of that point where we need to ask ourselves fundamental questions around what is Africa all about? We have to understand that the power of our technology is a power and literally an invitation to dream again. We now need to ask ourselves, what will we dream of? Who are we going to bring on board to the team? And who are we going to go with to where no man or woman has ever been before? We need to be daring. We need to be confident in ourselves. We need to know that we have that capacity all around us, and that the real task that is before us is fundamentally to conceptualize a future possible and then to walk into it. But who knows what's going to happen next? I don't think I do. And I'm not sure that anybody, individual person actually knows. But together we can start that exploration. And that's why it's really important for us to have a few principles, which I would like to close off with. The first is that, this quote that things always become obvious after the fact is real. And the things that become obvious after the fact were created by people who are outliers. They're created by people like yourselves on this call, who are thinking out of the box, thinking far ahead of the curve, who are looking beyond the horizon, and who dare. As you study your organizations, your communities, and even yourself as an individual, you're seeing things and maybe understanding possibilities that are almost absurd to anybody else. It's absurd to think of one-to-one learning in Africa. It's absurd to think of every child having a device. It's absurd to think of rural communities connected to our devices, our services. It's absurd to think of 100% coverage of a connected and pervasive connection. It's absurd to think of Africa being a key player in the world economy. There's so many absurdities because we look around us and we see all the challenges that we have. But it's going to be the one person who says, I see that, I recognize it, but what I see is not just the challenge, I see the opportunity, and I'm going to go after it. And in doing so, you have to be careful that you are not on a bus that has a driver who is blindfolded. You have to be the CIO, the person who removes the blindfolds from your leadership. Oftentimes, and in the early days, the IT function was buried beneath the accounting function and was treated as a cost center. What we've seen is a gradual evolution over the past 20 years where this role has actually become more strategic. The strategy means that the visioning doesn't sit with the CEO, particularly around how technologies can actually transform an organization or even a country. It sits primarily with the CIO. This is your job to actually figure out what comes next. And as you're trying to figure out what comes next, you have to remove the blindfolds from everyone who's around you, particularly those that you report into. Because if they are blindfolded, then you're always going to be at the other end, telling stories that nobody, and describing a vision that nobody can actually see. In doing so, we have to recognize that we build for our countries, we build for our companies, we build for our communities, but we're also building for the world. Because we are so interconnected that anything that we innovate around in Africa becomes something that the world starts to look at and to ask questions, how can this work for us? Already we can see in the fintech space that Africa is leading the world. There are so many things, so many innovations coming out of Africa in the fintech space, from M-Pesa to the other payment systems that are coming out, to even things like basic scratch cards, and even the use of GSM, a mobile-first world that Africa is leading, is actually what the rest of the world has to come up to. We should not be afraid of globalization. We should not be intimidated by what's happening in other countries. We should work with the confidence that what is happening with the technology world is that the interlocking fragility makes it important that what I do in Lagos is important to the person in Japan. And with that confidence, we should build to win. Excuse me. I'll just quickly go over, about 6 or 7 things that in this deck that I just so we can close quickly. Convergence has already happened. Ubiquity, we clearly understand. Now we're going into the world where data has become a huge thing. Africa, COVID forced this move where people have started to understand that big data and data analytics is actually what is driving the world. COVID forced this realization. So even countries and companies that were paying lip service to this now realize that big data is absolutely important. And this is at the heart of the offering that we have to put forward. We also kind of understand that companies and organizations and even countries have to be elastic. There is no one fixed way of doing anything. What we're interested in is what works and what delivers that efficiently. We're also seeing movements into the cloud. So the simple adoption of Zoom created a broad understanding for even the most digitally illiterate person that there is a service sitting somewhere out there that has infinite capacity to be able to connect us and to enable you to do all sorts of things. With the understanding that there are now no limits to computing power and capacity, we now have to architect the world for ourselves that isn't limited to the geographies that we're used to. Of course, speed is a given. The big thing for me is around diversity. We're starting to see Africa embracing the concept of diversity and bringing on board gender issues that have long been suppressed and have been a bane for our continent. The idea that 50% or more of our population can be more or less assigned to performing, to underperforming, and to limit the potential of that group. And as we start to see women breaking through, not even a glass ceiling, but actually just putting back a chair, just sitting down and saying, well, I'm here, do what you want. you know, whatever you think about that, I'm sitting at the table and I'm not leaving. We're seeing women not even coming into those roles as a concession, but as an assertion. They're taking agency and stepping into those roles in leadership. And we're starting to see it is no coincidence. And I say this with due respect to gentlemen like myself on the call. Everywhere that we have seen women in leadership, particularly through the COVID crisis, we have seen an exceptional performance, not just in terms of the results, but in terms of the sheer humaneness of the response, the inclusiveness and the capacity for them to bring business issues into the domain of humanity and still make them work. So diversity is a super huge thing for us to deal with as we talk about digital transformation. We're also seeing massive fragmentation happening within our environments. The divides have gone from 90% to 99%. In countries like Nigeria, 97% of the people have under 500,000 naira in their bank accounts. Literally means that you just have a tiny sliver of people who are influencing economies, and yet there's huge demand at the base. How do we deal with this fragmentation of socioeconomic relations and socioeconomic categories within our demographies? How do we enable as many people enter this digital economy and begin to participate inside the system? We believe, and I believe really strongly, that we're going to see increasingly the cost of transactions, including things like connecting to the internet, drop into a level of free. That free means that you onboard into a system, and just like we've seen with platforms like the Facebooks and the YouTubes of this world, the currency is changing. Your cost of access, your cost of accessing these platforms is literally free. There is no cost in terms of money, but there is an alternate cost in terms of attention. And as we begin to build this attention economy, we also have to start thinking around the fragility of our environment. We have to think about the circular economy. We have to think about the efficiencies with which we actually utilize the capacities and the assets that we have to make them renewable, to deal with issues around vulnerability and volatility. And particularly in our urban areas, we're facing challenges of massive urban fragility. Rural urban migration is increasing, and yet the capacity of governments to actually handle what is the burden that comes from this fragmentation, from this increasing concentration of wealth in amongst a few people is massive. In all of these things, I deeply, deeply, deeply believe that we must operate on the basis of openness. No walls, no borders, no boundaries. The Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement is a step in the right direction, and it's truly going to transform Africa. It's going to open up opportunities that we never thought were possible. It's going to make it possible for us to see each other as truly one continent and to rise, but we have to be able to rise together. And this is why this conference is so supremely important, that we need to be responsible. We need to be able to step forward and own the space that truly belongs to us, which is to architect that future, to decide on what that future is going to look like, and to encourage people to join us on that journey into that space. For the CIO to do that, the CIO must be a visionary. You have to be a prophet. You have to be a helper, a healer, a guide, a mentor. But most importantly, you have to be 100% committed in such a way that your courage powers through. It comes from your courage and from your innermost values. That's what people are going to connect to. That you rise above the pecuniary and envision a future that is possible, that creates capabilities for the full potential of every individual that falls under your jurisdiction. And in doing so, you will find a number of things. I won't go into any of these details, but I just want to end here. I think this is more important with this open door. There's no way that we're going back from technology. And we're looking, the world is looking for guides. It's looking for people who understand the capabilities that sit within the technology space and are able to relate those capabilities directly to the aspirations and the very legitimate aspirations of individuals, organizations, communities, and nations. And that's what the CIO really is. So if you have been operating in the context of that doesn't carry this burden, that doesn't deliver this burden to you, this is the time for you to change. if we're going to have a new normal, it's because we're going to have CIOs who recognize what this new normal needs to be like and have the capacity, the conviction, the capability, the network, and as I said, the courage to take us there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chineye. I mean, what you have said is very laudable and very relevant, especially in the discussions that we are having today. Just to pick some of your points that you've said that has really been outstanding. You have challenged us that we are in the age of yesterday, and we must now think of the future possibilities, and that we as CIOs, we have to get a spark that our vision and see past the present and look at into the future. I think that is something that is very challenging to the current CIOs, and we must create, solutions that are acceptable and also very relevant, and look at creating companies that go on to become unicorn. Thank you very much, Chineye, for that. I just want to now go and introduce John Bosco Arendt. John Bosco Arendt is the Group Head Information and Network Technology Operations at the City of Johannesburg in South Africa. He is the chairperson, Chartered ICO Council. He's also a Chartered CIO Advisor, ICT Steering Committee, Department of Employment and Labor in the City of Johannesburg. He has a national diploma in business management, marketing, and related support service from the University of Pretoria. Just to get us going, no one knows how long this pandemic will last, but it looks like this event will, change the way we work, just as Chineye has outlined, and also the way organizations function moving forward. This means that organizations will need to learn both on the fly and also after the pandemic ends to increase, one, their agility and also resilience. How does your organization, need to evolve, and what are the lessons learned from this crisis? John. John, are you in the call? John Bosco.
Yes, I am sorry about that. I just had a bit of a connection break.
Did you hear my question?
No, I'm afraid not. If you can maybe just repeat it for me. I just had a bad connection there.
I was saying that no one knows how long this pandemic is going to last. And obviously, there are changes that CIOs will have to make. My question was, how does your organization need to evolve, and what are the lessons learned from this crisis?
So what we are doing is 4 fundamental steps that we follow. So the first one that we do is we try and get our organizational readiness in terms of remote working implemented. So we've done some critical changes to our networks and our infrastructure, but also have allowed people remote access into systems that they previously would only have enjoyed from the safety and security of the corporate network. The second thing that we do is we actually provide support services for our employees for remote work. But what we also do is we actually take them through a process of mentoring, because a lot of people, when they leave the workplace, don't know how to behave when they're working from home. So you'll find some people are actually cleaning their houses, some people are actually doing other things other than performing their work. But I think from a technical perspective, we were fortunate enough as a city to already have invested in productivity suite solutions that we were using internally. So when the pandemic struck us, we were able to deploy those and actually that way continue with growth and with delivery of service. But I think what is important is that from a council perspective, in terms of the Chartered CIO Council, what we are doing is we are actually having programs of development so we can create and understand that the skills requirement that is needed for digital workplace and digital workforce, so that people can learn how to automate some of their processes, how to actually take digitization and driving that through. So if you look at the current spend, even from IT Web and all these other research organizations, you'll find that there's been a dramatic increase, just like for us at the city, in terms of cloud expenditure, in terms of emails, in terms of network availability and connectivity, and also in terms of digitization. So we have adopted all those 4 key pillars as a way of driving our remote workforce. Thanks.
Thank you very much, John, for that. I think there are many ways that you have highlighted some of the things that your organization is doing to really enable people to continue working with, even within the time of the crisis. And one of the things that you have highlighted is enabling people to automate their, current programs so that they are able to continue working in spite of the pandemic. I will then go on to introduce Sen Adejelu. Sen Adejelu is the Chief Executive Officer, ICIPT South Africa. He has a Bachelor of Commerce in Information Technology and Management from UNISA, and also is an alumni of United States Telecommunication Training Institute. Mr. Sen, as an IT regulator and professional organization, post-COVID-19 has brought a lot of challenges into this space. What initiatives are in place to reposition your members in the new world of work and business? And what are some of the business needs of organization with regards to digital transformation? Sen, over to you.
Good morning or good afternoon. I hope you can hear me, right?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
All right. So the name of the organization is the Institute of Chartered IT Professionals. It's ICITP. So we are a regulatory body for the IT sector in South Africa. So one of the things that we do is the recognition of CIOs in Africa and in other continents. Our professional qualification for CIOs, which is the Chartered CIO SA, is the only one that is available right now all over the world. So as a Chartered CIO, we believe that you cannot just call yourself a CIO without the competencies required for you to be able to carry that status. Because nowadays we have a lot of people who call themselves CIOs, and at the end of the day, if you look at the companies they work for, they can't actually, deliver or implement anything that the CIO do. So going to your question, one of the things we do is that we make sure that chartered CIOs in South Africa, they comply to the requirements of their professional qualification. If you call yourself a CIO in South Africa and you are chartered, it means that we expect you to be able to implement some certain things that is required by CIOs in any company that you work for. So we have our CIOs in different sectors in South Africa. Even some ministers are also carrying that designation in South Africa. And this designation is also available for anyone in Africa. If you have actually served in any major organizations or public sector in Africa, you can actually, get certified as a chartered CIO from South Africa without writing any exam. And that is based on recognition of prior learning. So let me go into your question. The first thing is that digital transformation is not just a technology or a trend, which anyone can learn or implement quickly. It requires leadership. It requires proper strategy and also clear implementation. So these things are things that we require the CIOs, to go through as a continuing professional development activities, within their annual, membership duration, in order for us to be able to know that most of the CIOs that are chartered are actually engaging themselves in skills and activities that can allow them to transform their organizations. And one of the things we look in their CPD activities are things that, we believe that having those competencies is very easy for them to implement digital transformation in their organization. We expect them to be able to initiate. Digital transformation should be a strategy which covers each and everyone inside the organization, starting from the executive level. If your employees are not mentally ready or technologically trained enough to accept technological transformation, it is difficult for them to implement your strategies. So CIOs need to make a cultural change to succeed in their digital initiatives. That's one of the things we expect from the chartered CIO in South Africa that are working for the major, big companies in Africa. Another thing is that we expect them to inspire the organization. CIOs should be very active in identifying organizational challenges. They should be able to analyze solutions. They should be actually in the driver's seat, and lead from the front, implementing ideas. They should inspire other, C-suite employees to join in the mission, to motivate other employees to embrace IT and create an internet digital culture. I think that's the first thing they need to do. And another thing is that they must be risk takers. Chartered CIOs should always keep an eye on ongoing digital transformation. They should learn how to implement those in their company. Digitally advanced companies don't really require management approval sometimes, if a new technology comes which can boost your digital plans, they can implement without much thinking. So the next thing that we also require, we support the CIOs to do is to invest in developing a pool of IT professionals, within the organizations. CIOs should inspire every tech person inside the company. And this is their responsibility to identify and, the ability to find right talents, to groom them, to lead the organization in the future. Also, if any new technology comes, they should be able to allow those tech guys to learn. And CIOs should calculate the talent gap in the organization and make strategies in fulfilling those talent gaps. Another thing is they should be able to drive the company's vision. As a C-suite employee, it is the job of a CIO to keep the organizational vision in mind and also in the mind of the people in the organization. You need to make sure that the company is moving in the same direction and need to communicate if any digital reforms happen inside the company. So to accelerate digital transformation and to keep the organization, its employees, its partners, and also all of their customers connected, CIOs should follow a standardized core set of technology, which can evolve around the business. I will mention two more, which is infrastructure investment. The CIO should make sure that the organization keeps on doing IT infrastructure development. So that, that should not be a hurdle in any of the, initiation. IT infrastructure should be flexible. It should be agile and cost-friendly. And the last one, which is very easy, and which is one of the things that we achieve during a kind of conference like this, is collaboration, to grow. So CIOs should keep an eye for right partners, with whom they can collaborate and make future strategies. So many CIOs believe in, it's always safer and cost-effective to hire external specialists rather than developing internally. Who can understand your company vision in a broader sense and have specific expertise to work on it than the people that you work with. So partnership and collaboration is one of the most important things. So having said this, I think I've been able to give you information about our expectation and what we are doing in terms of CIOs in South Africa. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sean Adegelu, for that intervention. Talking about the role of ICITP with regards to, grooming qualified professionals in South Africa and the whole of Africa as well, particularly with the top leadership qualification, the Chartered CIO certification, which every CIO needs to strive to have. I thank you for that. And also you mentioned quite a lot about collaboration, grooming your internal competencies for your staff, having a vision for tomorrow, having an eye for tomorrow, for the future and all of that. So CIOs needs to be able to envision the future and be able to work collaboratively and all that. So I guess CIOs on this call basically will want to be ranked among the Chartered CIOs globally with the Chartered CIO certification that is coming out from South Africa, which ICITP basically it's certifying qualified, competent CIOs global. So thank you for that, Mr. Sean Adegelu. I'm just going to go quickly to another panelist. She holds an MBA from the University of Nicosia in Cyprus, an MIT from the University of Pretoria, a BCom honors degree from University of Pretoria, and a Bachelor of Arts from Adventist University of Central Africa. She has a wide range of experiences in telecoms, investments, construction, security services, building materials, insurance brokerage, and all of that. She speaks English, French, Swahili, and Kinyarwanda. She's a passionate IT specialist with over 20 years experience. She specialized in solution architecture. She drives IT strategies and solutions, innovation, business efficiency, and continuity in different areas of operations. She had achieved automation of different business processes, allowing companies to focus on their core businesses and concentrate on turning companies into profitable business. She is currently working on various digitalization projects that embodies cybersecurity, mobility, and data analytics. She's currently the head of IT at Equity Bank, Rwanda, where she oversees the digital transformation of the bank and runs different business projects. Prior to that, she was the Group IT Director of Crystal Ventures for 8 years, an IT Project Manager and Solution Architect of MTN Rwanda. She also serves in different boards as a non-executive director. I'm just going to go straight before I bring up Carol Karami Jenny to us. I'm just going to shoot the question before she comes on and answer the question. Basically, CIOs are facing the greatest challenge of their careers. I mean, Mr. Chide alluded to that when he was doing his presentation. We're seeing infrastructure breakdowns, denial of service attacks, and sites going down because of traffic load. Even as companies grapple with the implications of the COVID-19 pandemic, it is already clear that CIOs are playing a central role in navigating the crisis. How is this pandemic affecting the way organizations, including yours, operate? Carol, Jenny, please, over to you.
Thank you very much, Frank, for having me. Good afternoon, everyone. This is a very interesting question. I think now we're in the second year with COVID. And as you just mentioned from the presentation that you did, there's quite a lot of happening in the CIO place. And I think on the first year, we had a lot of pressure because we had to change the way business used to operate in a different angle. So like for me who worked in a bank, you can imagine initially the banks had working hours from 8 to 5. So after 5, you won't have any bank hall open. The team will be busy working internally, trying to reconcile, to close accounts, and prepare end of day so that the next day, our customers are able to come and be served. So with the COVID, there's quite a bit, there's impacts that happen to most of the organization, all the businesses. So with that impact, number one, what you're saying, customers are demanding, because what's happened, they will have to travel to come to the branches to get services, but now they need to get all these services on their cell phones. So by having all our customers on the cell phone, you can imagine most of the organization were not ready to have all these customers. Maybe you do 200 transactions per day. It's all serving customers, but now you have to operate 24/7 because customers want to have access to the bank account anytime. They want to do any transactions. And for a certain time, you even have transactions like third-party transaction will happen 24 hours later. But now with all the services, bank services going into digital, you need to do each and every service instantly. So you can imagine the impact now on that demand coming from the customers. As you clearly mentioned, there's a load on infrastructure. The infrastructure load is there because you see a number of transactions. We used to have, I can say maybe 300 transactions, 1,000 transactions, 300,000 transactions. But all of a sudden you see we have millions of transactions. And these transactions are coming from different systems. They need to be integrated and they need to provide an end service to a customer. So as you mentioned, there's quite pressure on the infrastructure. Some of the organizations were not ready to have that infrastructure ready to serve customers. One of the, maybe I'm lucky to belong to an organization that saw it before. We had a visionary leadership that started the digitization some years back. So by the time COVID came, it was just a matter of acceleration of putting this product on the market. So that was maybe one side of the banking sectors, but which was not from the others. So number one is the customer is demanding, which demands transactions that are instantly, and now of course has an impact on infrastructure. So there's quite a growth, spikes everywhere. You find number of breakdown, a number of spikes, or utilization of resources that are growing, which is impacting the overall services to our customers. So for that, I'll come back maybe to what we've been trying to do so that we make sure that our customers still access the services and also the bank continue operating. So the second impact is on business. Like more specifically for the banks, we're here because there's a customer who has trusted us. So if you look at the business of the banks, it's number one on the trust. A customer will come to you because number one, they trust to keep money with you, and they'll trust as well to come and seek for more, can I say, cash to do business. But now the impact has been on the health of our customers. Mostly if you look at the SMEs, these are the small, medium enterprises, they've been impacted. If I come back specifically to a country like ours, we had a very difficult period during COVID where we had to have lockdown so that we can, we were able to maintain, say, to control the pandemic. So by having lockdowns, by having measures like distanciations, by having measures where some of the industry could not operate, you can imagine the economic shock that we had. So on the side of the banks, for example, you find most of our customers that had a specific trend of business growth, suddenly the spark will go on the other way. So you can imagine the impact not only on the economic shock, these are economic shock that our customers that bring us revenues and make us more profitable, of course, to serve them. Then something else that also, the impact that we also got on the of COVID, again, is the ability, you have your customers accessing any bank services through the digital channels. That could be the application, the apps, you can be the USSD channels, you can be on the web, online. So you have a number of customers now you need to protect. So that had the impact of governance. As you know, the traditional banks, you have a regulator, and there's a certain of control you need to have in place for you to provide services. So with COVID, that has to be changed, not to say that we were to forget all the governance in place, but to adapt. So that was also another impact. So as in Equity Bank, what we've been doing is, number one, when the COVID came, I remember in early March, so we put in place a BCP committee, a business continuity, to first of all assess the market, to see impact on our internal staff, but also see impact of our customers. So our BCP, we look at the different angles of the business, the people, the processes, and the technology. So on the people side, mostly on the customer, maybe I'll go to the external customers, we had to come up with a plan to see how do we support our customers. Those mostly impacted, for example, in Rwanda, we had, I think even across the whole world, we had industries like hospitality, transportation, and logistics that were much impacted. So you can imagine even real constructions in a certain way, they were also impacted, mostly because of the workers. So some of the work could not continue. So we had to look at, first of all, those customers, how do we support? So good enough with the will of the government, there's been a lot of economic plans that we support these companies. So with our customers, we had to look and say, okay, well, how do we support them? We came up with plans of restructuring loans, for example, supporting, advising them on how they should behave in that period of COVID. Of course, the impact is still there. With the fourth quarter, we're seeing a pickup on some of the businesses reopening and movement of transactions, but which was really impacted. So that support of the customers came up, number one. Number two, of our staff. So during that period, we had to change the way of working. Of course, self-distanciation. So we had to see how people are working. We had to have in place recovery sites so that in a case of a spike of the pandemic, we know how to relocate our staff so that they could still support our customers. As you know, in the banking sector, most of the time you have we have to ensure that you have a maker and checker for each of the transactions. So for us to ensure that there's a maker and checker, then you need to ensure as well you don't put them in danger and having one place. So remote working was something that we had to work with, implement quickly. It was mostly done for the IT team because we work 24/7, but now we had to extend it to most of the staff, for example, from operation, from marketing, from commercial, finance. So the good thing, we just need to extend. So this is something that we managed quickly. Then something that also we had to do was to consider the type of staff that we have. You have staff that work far. You had to see who are the critical staff. And then we see how do we create backup, succession, and also to ensure in a case one site is, impacted much by the pandemic, we're able to continue business. So that was very critical for us from both the internal customers and external customers. On the infrastructure, as you could see, the impact of COVID had changed the trends. So maybe you have a growth. Some of the time we see a growth of 11% or 12% of transactions. But now with COVID, you had an abnormal changing in the graphs. So of course, because of uncertainty, a lot of uncertainty came from our customers, but also even the staff. You not know tomorrow you're going to come in work and then you're still okay, or maybe you're going to impact it because once our regulation was saying once you let's say impacted by COVID or one of your family, you had to be isolated for 10 days, and some of the work not really, they'll be working remotely. So that support as well need to be there. So another impact that we've seen, as I mentioned, is now the cybercrime. So what happened? We managed to move the business from a traditional way to the digital way, but now you also have the more smarter people. So they come from the ATMs. For example, in our case, we have a possibility. You can withdraw from your bank account using an ATM card. You can withdraw money from your account by using your phone. And then you just go to the nearest agents to pick that money. But now what happened? You have now people sniffing on the ATM lobbies, coming And because this was new for our customers, they'll come near the branches, try to sniff critical information from our customers and make some fraudulent activities. So you've had those cases. You had cases where because most of the transaction you need a security code from your phone, you get people doing illegal SIM swaps. So you can imagine the cybercrime also grown quickly. So we had to make measures where we had to do a lot of awarenesses, sessions and messages to customers. Do not share your personal codes, do not share your PINs. If you should not just trust anyone. So that's also were done to make sure that the cyber crimes decreases. And then we also fast. So whenever one of the customers get an issue, we're able to support them and handle them. And of course, doing investigation. And then based on those trends, we're able to get back to not only our staff, but also to our customers. So the impact, what we've been trying to do with COVID, we were fortunate the banking sector did not continue to be profitable because, as I said, our bank, Equity Bank, was ready to go on digital. We actually started to digital. What the COVID-19 came to do was mostly to accelerate some of those products on the market. And today, I can tell you, we, on 100% transaction used to on the branch hall, 67% are now digital. So we are seeing the 40% remaining coming is third-party transactions. Let's say you want to transfer money, you want to do something, but even those, they are coming. Today, with an Equity Bank account, you're able to do your FX online, you can draw money, you can deposit money, you can do a number of activities and transactions that you used to do to the branch with a teller looking at you. So the impact, as I think Janae mentioned, there's challenges and opportunity, but maybe I'll come back to maybe I don't know if I'll come back later. The roles of the CIO now is to turn those impacts that we've seen into opportunities for the bank. He mentioned, how do you take those challenges and now create that door where we transform our current environments to go to the new normal? Because some of the challenges we can see around us, the businesses that has been more impacted, is because they didn't they didn't adapt quickly. As he said, they're still looking on how to go back to the old normal. Yet we need to break that. So as a role of CIOs here is to break that glass where we say, okay, now let's continue. But in fact, with technology, you can leverage this. With technology, you can leverage that. With technology, you can do this and this. So there's quite a lot of opportunities, mostly coming from a technology perspective that we can use what has impacted our businesses, our people, our countries, and turn to opportunities now we can see forward and how rejuvenate our organization to benefit from that. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Carol, for that loaded response. I mean, you mentioned quite a lot, and I'm glad that your bank has moved digitally to cater for both internal and external issues. I mean, all your stakeholders, you actually digitally, brought them together and still deliver the kind of service, as a matter of fact, better service, to your both your internal and external customers, basically. So, I mean, like you said, you guys were ready for digital transformation. You started the process already before COVID came. So COVID actually has to push you guys, accelerate you guys to, deploying your digital transformation process and all that. I mean, that's awesome. I think lessons learned from COVID-19. I'm going to quickly go to our lead speaker, Mr. Chineye. I have a question for you. Basically, during a crisis, organizations either pull together or pull apart. When organizations pull apart, it's often because stakeholders have lost sight of a unifying vision, mission, or goal. To counter the confusion of the day with regards to COVID-19, senior leaders need to make sure that people throughout the organization are aware of the here and now challenges and the new and emerging internal and external priorities. How aligned are organizations, both internal and externally, right now in Africa? And what advice do you have for CIOs and IT leaders across Africa in this regard? Mr. Chineye.
Oh, thank you. As the last speaker, Carol, I believe, has said, you know, the real thing is that there's a real and present problem, which is that you have to deal with the realities of the now, at the same time envision what happens after now. Because you can't be stuck in the, and that tends to be very overwhelming. The realities that she's so very well described and the challenges that she's been addressing leave very little time to start to think about the future. And that's where that connection has to take place. And that's where you really have to, that's where your visioning and your leadership skills actually come in as a CIO, to be able to communicate that, you know, in the midst of, as is often said in the aphorism, in the midst of a crisis, you know, somebody has to keep their heads. The one person at least must keep their head and understand that there will be an after. So segmenting your vision, your process, segmenting your time as a CIO between dealing with what is the current issues and what you project into the future is absolutely important. And in doing so, you know, once the CIO is able to do that, you're able to pull the rest of your leadership into that space of what happens in the aftermath. What happens after the storm? You plan your future in the midst of your crisis. So, and yes, it is true. The reality, the realities of the moment, the pressures around revenue, all the other KPIs that are being pursued in the organization, just keeping the lights on and keeping the business going is what consumes everybody at a time of crisis. And this is what I was referring to earlier, that the CIO is in a really difficult position, but that is really the place where the transformation, digital transformation actually has to begin, because the others are going to be really, really stuck in the mechanics or in the dynamics of keeping the business itself going. And so I think that and what I have seen in the past and what I've seen in working with my clients has been that the calmness that is required to be able to set aside the time that is thinking time and just kind of like ring fence that time, create the kind of like the initial ideas and the outlines of what would happen afterwards in terms of scenario building, and then inviting your team leaders or your management into that same space with you to occasionally just be thoughtful and reflect. You know, you kind of like have to find that quiet space to have that happen. When we are not able to create that and everybody's rushing, then clearly there's going to be a misalignment in terms of vision, in terms of strategy, and in terms of the tactical delivery. So that's a key point. The CIOs require incredible amounts of discipline, and at the same time, they also have to exercise leadership in terms of calling people to the table to have the discussions that they feel may be a waste of time in the midst of a crisis. And I'll be really interested in hearing how others have handled this. But that's really what it is. I mean, just the sheer pressure of the number of Zoom calls. I think remote working has even created additional pressures. So our Saturdays and Sundays have disappeared. There is no boundary anymore in terms of timing. We're all used to talking to people at ungodly hours. We're challenged in our homes. We're dealing with our home environment from where we often work. Like I'm talking from home and I'm saying, oh, I'm so happy there's nobody around at the moment, you know, but because all the distractions just tend to come in and kind of push you aside. Even the best laid plans can be set aside. So in summary, the fundamental is holding to that discipline. And that then using that discipline to create the space for the thought space where you can then bring in your leadership and you can have that discussion and literally lay out the scenarios and explore operational plans for dealing with for implementing a strategy that you help them design.
Thank you so very much, Mr. Chineye, for that. You just mentioned something that for me is very important: the remote working from home, and all the challenges about working from home. I'm just going to, as we begin to go towards our wrap up time, I'm just going to ask this question to all of you, the lead speaker, the panelists. But I'm going to take Chineye last. He's going to respond last. I'm going to allow Carol to start, then John Bosco to follow her, then Shehu to follow, then Mr. Chineye will actually respond last. And the question basically is this, which is, it has to do with working from home and it has to do with the staff and all that. So based on various polls and studies, employees are concerned about COVID-19 and how it will impact their lives, both physically and financially. In one recent study we conducted, we found that 91% of participants were worried that the virus may affect themselves or their families. During this time of heightened anxiety, it is important to approach your employees with empathy and understanding. What support do employees need during this outbreak and post-COVID-19? I'm going to start with Carol. Then I'll go, John follows, then Shehu, and then Mr. Chinenye wraps up that question. So the question basically is this: what support do employees need during COVID-19 and post-COVID-19? Carol?
So I'll share an example of how I've been handling with my team for the working remotely. So when the COVID started, of course, you can imagine working with departments. We service everyone 24/7. So there's quite a lot of things that require specialization. For example, where maybe you may have one person, two person have that specialization, and they needed to be there. But sometimes you see our staff being stressed, because I can give an example. I have one lady, and she has 4 kids and a husband. That is 6 people. So the question will always be, what if I'm getting infected? I'm going to infect 6 people. You see how people will be thinking, mostly maybe ladies. So they think, okay, this is 6 people. So by the discussion, what we did, number one, we did a rotation. So we did, you work 3 days, the other team work 3 days. So this we actually give reliefs. So something that also I did was, we had a discussion as a team, and we agreed to any calls, any service, any request, any project that is requested from us. We don't need people to come in our office. So what we did, we sent an official memo to everyone. We had a call, we had a WhatsApp, we had an email, and says, should you need anything from IT, just call us, send an email, raise a ticket, and we support you. And then we can even have Teams. That's the beauty of having tools like Teams or any other service. For us, we're using Teams, Microsoft Teams. Then we can even have a live discussion and see how we can support. So that was, first of all, number one, things that I've implemented in my department, and we've been working like that. So this already, first of all, was reducing the level of stress from the different teams. Number two was, you find a person who says, okay, I don't feel comfortable at all to come home. So this was continuously the discussion with the team, because first of all, by having a rotation work base, this was already good for some of the teams. But then I had, I believe, like 2 team members that were really scared to come back. But they say, okay, it is okay. You work from home, as long as every morning, what we have implemented was to have a stand-up. We have like a 15 minutes call. We discuss what is your plan. And then at the end of the week, what you achieve. And if there's any support, you raise it on the 15-minute stand-up, and then we discuss. So just to respond to your question, number one is to organize the office in a conductive way where everyone is comfortable to either come or not come. Number two is continuous one-to-one discussion. Some of the team, nothing, they don't be scared. And some of them will really be scared. So you need to identify those. And then you provide them facilitation. At the end of the day, what is most important is able to do, able to be accountable, and also to be productive. Because as a bank, mostly, we look at productivity. It's very key for us. So that's how I've been handling the working from home from the team and providing more empathy. Back to you.
Thank you so much, Carol, for that. I mean, like Chinenye said, everywhere that women were leaders during COVID-19, there was exceptional performance, with women and all that. So I'd like to go to Mr. John Bosco Arends. Just tell us, respond to this question, please, in just about 2-3 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. So I think this question is basically a continuation from where I started off when you asked me the original question around what did we do as an institution to deal with the fallout from COVID-19. So because we are a citizen organization, a customer-facing organization as a metro in South Africa, in fact, one of the largest municipalities in our country, and very close to being one of the large ones in Africa. People were at the center of what we did. And at that point in time, we were fortunate from an ICT perspective to have had investments done in digitization already as part of our ongoing strategy that allowed us to react as quickly as we were able to do. But I think at the end of the day, when it comes to people, our focus at the city was two streams focused. So the first stream dealt with our employees. The second one dealt with our partners in terms of providing services to the public. So what we had to do from an employee perspective is we had to put in place 10 critical events, if I can use that word, to actually drive that employee empowerment and enablement to operate within a COVID environment. So the first thing we had to do is we very quickly had to allocate resources to enable people to work from home. And to allocate those resources, we had to do policy changes. So we very quickly got committees together in the middle of the night, and we passed policies that would otherwise have prevented us from allowing people to perform workplace out of sight of the office environment. Because when you look at people's contractual obligations, they would report for duty at a physical address. And if they don't report for duty at a physical address, the unions were going to let people just sit at home and enjoy the nice time and come back again and do something else. So that was the first thing, policy changes. The second thing we had to do is traditionally from an IT spend perspective, we would invest in desktop type technologies, and only certain executives within the city would have had the opportunity to either use a laptop or B, use a mobile device in terms of being able to work from it, not your normal phone, email story. Everybody had that. So we needed to make sure that suddenly we would fast track our refresh cycle to make sure that now from an employee perspective, we were able to provide them with mobility to then be able to work from home. The third thing we had to do from a people perspective, from our employee perspective, is we needed to provide them with resources to work from home. So we went and engaged with the likes of MTN, who is our cellular provider at the moment during this lockdown period. And we then negotiated bulk data contracts with the city where people could actually deploy that bulk data to employee cell phones, whether it be a company phone, whether it be a personalized own instrument as well. So we did that from a data perspective. The next thing that we did in terms of addressing the employee environment was to make sure that they had a support mechanism, to make sure that there were certain routine checks and balances that were put in place, to make sure that people know what they needed to do to report for duty. Because previously, somebody would get to a building, they would sign in on a register, and they are then saying, I'm at work. So we needed to find the digital ways, and fortunately for us at that point in time, we already had versions of Outlook and Teams and all these other technologies in play that was predominantly used within Group ICT, because that's how we got our teams to work together, because we had a mobile workforce that needed to talk to each other at any given point in time. So it's about then redeploying some of those with our SharePoint technologies to allow people to do electronic checking in once they are in the systems. And we needed to quickly apply and fast track some of the technologies we wanted to have in terms of digitization that will allow people now to log in electronically, but also for us to identify three very key things: presence, location, and availability. After doing that, we then went on to the next step where we said, fine, for us to make sure that people are working, we can't just let people schedule meetings the whole day just to show that they are busy. We needed to find a way to track the activities of how people are working, and we managed to put a process in place that allowed us to do that. The final point that I want to raise around the employee side is that we had to put in an awareness campaign with constant messaging that we do whether it be through emails, whether it be through pop-up notifications on their phones, where we would send them different messages around COVID, different issues and things they needed to comply with from an employee perspective. A, to keep them safe. B, keep them informed. C, manage the hype around the emergency that creates that causes stress to our employees, and the unsurety of information and what the direction really is. So whenever there was something happening in the media, we would then have a statement coming in from the city manager's office that would then tell employees, based on what was discussed, this is the city's policy and view in terms of how we needed to address it. The last thing for me, which is the absolute fundamental thing of them all, dealing with the people fallout in terms of the pandemic, is we needed to make sure that not only our employees, but also their families had access to resources. So that when they are with their families, they are able to log off, they're able to have some family time, they're able to spend time together to heal. And when they have issues, they're able to contact somebody at the city and are able to talk to a person that would then guide them through the process with all privacy and protocol observed, so that they know that they can actually talk their heart out if they have an issue that they want to raise in a personal manner in terms of the environment. From a service provider perspective, we call them in and we try to divide up the workforce between what is physically required and what is technologically required. So for those that could work remotely, we would allow them. For those that could not do anything else, because you can't open a door remotely and check and see if the aircons are blowing and those things. Yes, you can check them online through monitoring tools, but there are certain type of activities that you can only do physically. And even what we did there was to create a rotation schedule that would allow some people to do it remotely, to do the monitoring, and some people to do the physical security checks to make sure that our data centers and other environments are kept safe and secure. So those are the basic key things that we put in place from a city perspective to make sure that throughout the pandemic, we have continually managed the people component, which is the real value in the city of Johannesburg, in delivering quality, effective, and efficient services to our citizens. Thank you.
Wow, thank you so much, John. I mean, for me, what just struck me was the keywords: presence, location, availability, of course, tracking and monitoring. I mean, awesome. Thank you so much for that. I just want to quickly go to Mr. Sean Adegelu. Can you just tell us in 2-3 minutes to respond to that question? 2-3 minutes, Mr. John. Thank you. Mr. Sean Adegelu, please.
Okay, so what I actually wanted to say is that the information you got from John is the same across South Africa, especially in the public, sector. So John Arends is a chartered CIO and is representing both the institute and the city of Johannesburg. So whatever information you have gotten from John, I think I also support it. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Sean Adegelu, CEO. ICITP South Africa. Okay, I just want to quickly go to Mr. Chinaya, our lead speaker for today, just as he answers the question and just gives us his closing statement, and so we'll just take it from there. Mr. Chinaya, please.
Oh, thank you for having me back. And I mean, John Bosco's remarks as well as Carol's kind of like cover the entire gamut of what the CIOs are facing, and I really must congratulate them. I think they've done really. I mean, just listening to them, I just this makes me really happy. And this is what Africa has: incredible resources that we really don't even know, and they only unveil themselves when you've got this crisis. I mean, the kind of actions that they've taken are, very critical lessons, and I would encourage you and the rest of the team who've put this together to codify this, curate it, and make this available to people. I mean, there's so many important lessons dealing with the public sector, having to keep the citizen at the in view, or the customer totally in view, structuring all your responses around how to have continuity of service. I mean, it was just absolutely brilliant. And I really congratulate you guys for what you've done, not just for your people and your community, but also in terms of the industry as a whole, for what we can actually learn on how to deal with this crisis. I do want to just end with a statement that I must be a bit sound like a bit of a broken record, but you know, sometimes we have to like reach out to each other and give each other big hugs. It's a lonely place to be. Oftentimes, you're often really the one who's carrying the can, who's the one who's responsible for trying to explain why things are not working, dealing with individuals within the workspace. And also, in many cases, recognizing that there's some people who have so much difficulty in making that transition into the digital environment and the kind of environment that has been enforced by COVID, that they just cannot cope. The first thing we have to do, and what we always have to operate from, I believe, is from the perspective of an individual. You are a person, a human being, relating to a human being, and working with a human being to deliver services. The idea that we separate our humanity from our corporation and from the business that we have to do is one that is particularly difficult for these challenging times, where you really have to show empathy for workers, as well as or show empathy for your customers, whether it's a citizen or it's a customer of the institution. So that empathy costs a lot. I mean, I used to watch, and like most of us, we watched video clips of frontline workers in the hospitals and the kind of challenges that they faced and how they broke down oftentimes on TV crying. I don't know if any CIO cries, or if a CIO were to cry, anybody would give you any sympathy. But this is just to say that we recognize that there's a big emotional involvement in what it is that you're doing, and that's a big commit that you're making to your people. And just to say thumbs up to you, and on behalf of everyone who's out there, for the systems that you've kept in place, for the people that you've been able to carry into new positions, and for the future challenges that you're going to face in terms of making this a welcome place for all in this new normal that we're building. Be of good courage and trust yourselves. Your instincts usually, and your human instincts, are actually the most important thing that you need to preserve in the time of crisis. And of course, act with discipline, as we've said before. I have a lot of kind of like faith in what's going to happen in the years ahead. I think Africa is coming into its own, and the COVID, with all the tragedies, has kind of like forced us and accelerated us into this space where digital transformation is not an option. It's the only way forward. And the key architects and builders of that future are the CIOs. So thank you very much, and good luck to everyone.
Wow, thank you so very much, Mr. Chinenye, for that closing statement. Well, distinguished guests and participants, we're gradually coming to wrap up for this session. I just want to thank, especially this afternoon, Mr. Chinenye Mbauzoku, our lead speaker for today. Also, our distinguished panelists, Carol Karema Jenny, John Bosco Arends, and Mr. Sean Adegelu, the CEO of ICITP South Africa. To you participants, our esteemed guests, I hope you had gained deep insights that will aid you make contribution to rebuild, reset, and renew Africa's technology leadership in your organization, and ensure that you're creating value as a CIO or technology professional. It's not going to say that technology plays a pivotal role in ensuring resilience and agility in organizations, looking back with regards to COVID-19 and into the future as well. The CIO Masterclass Africa, in continuation of its CIO Africa Leadership Series, will continue to bring to you these riveting conversations with thought leaders and influencers within the African space and beyond in both English and French language. Hopefully, we're going to get Mr. Chinenye back again in time to come to also share with us some thoughts. Also, our panelists as well, John Bosco, Carol, and Sean as well. You know, we're expecting that we're going to get them back in time to come as well. We're going to continue this, bring you these conversations within the African space and beyond. We encourage you to drop us an email. You can actually basically reach us on this platform, on social media platform. So you can drop us an email on YouTube, CIO Masterclass Africa. You can reach us there. On LinkedIn, CIO Masterclass Africa as well on LinkedIn. In Twitter, at CIO Masterclass. Of course, the email is there, info@debmishare.com, info@CIOAfricaPlatform.Africa. Then the website for CIO Masterclass is currently under construction, which is going to be live soon. So you can reach us on all of these channels: the CIO Masterclass Africa YouTube, CIO Masterclass Africa LinkedIn, at CIO Masterclass Twitter. Then, of course, our email address is info@themission.com, info@CIOAfricaplatform.africa. Can you reach us on those channels, going forward? So we need to communicate with you and be in touch with you. If you have any suggestions of the kind of topics you want us to address, or the kind of speakers you want us to bring as our potential guests, then just drop us an email and we'll make that basically happen. And I believe you actually thoroughly enjoyed today's presentations and discussion and conversations that's happened across from Mr. Chinenye, from Carol, from John Bosco, and Sheung as well. And of course, we have an event survey that we want you to fill out once we wrap up. Event survey. Once you fill out the event survey, you're gonna get Mr. Chinenye's presentation. You're gonna get the video recording of this event as well. I mean, he talked about we codifying all of the things. We'll go from here. We're going to work on that as well to codify all of the information. We'll go from here today from the lead speaker and all the panelists, because there's valuable insight from all of those presentations today. So please do the survey so that you can be able to have access to the video, to the program video, and all of the presentation that we have today. Basically. So just endeavor to do that. Also, I want to thank Mr. Chikere, who is on technical, Mr. Kanu, who is the French interpreter for this program today. Of course, I want to thank my co-moderator, Mr. Nixon, all the way from Kenya, for being part of this as well. I'd like for us to just put on our videos. Let's just take a picture. Everybody, put on your videos, please. Let's just take a picture of everybody who's on this call. Put on your videos, please, everybody. I'd just like to put on your videos, everybody. Put on your videos. Put on your videos. Let's just take a photo of all of us. Just put on your videos. Mr. Chika, are you there? Just go ahead. Let's put on our videos. Okay, just want to see everybody on this call. Let's have our videos on. Mr. Sean, did you have a video on? Let's just have our videos on so we can just take a picture, all of us, please. Yeah, everybody. Let's have our videos on. Waiting for people to put on their videos. Let's just put on our videos, please. Gideon Aribike, Mr. Omar, Mr. Andeyaba, God's Purpose, Rachel, Ayodeji, Martins. Let's just put on our videos, please. Let's put on our videos, please, everybody. All right, everybody. Thank you so much, everybody, for being here. And like I said, just fill up the survey, and we're going to send you the recording for this event. And also, we're going to try and codify all of the positions that we have today, all of the discussions, so we can actually have something that people can work with in their various organizations and create value as IT professionals. And also, don't forget, if you're interested in being a chartered CIO, which is a very top leadership qualification for CIOs, on the chart, there's the contact for ICITP is there on the chart. Also, we're actually having a chartered CIO masterclass in November. So if you're interested, you can also enroll for that masterclass and get chartered as a CIO, basically. So that all the information is available on the chart. And of course, if you send us an email, we'll get back to you on that as well. So ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, my panelists, the speaker, I just want to thank you all for being here today. And we'll see next month, because we're going to continue this conversation going forward. We're focused on Africa, technology leaders, and that conversation will keep going because we want to ensure that Africa embraces technology for creating value for both public and private sector organizations going forward. So ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being here today. And I wish you a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful weekend. Thank you and God bless you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Nice weekend.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye. Have a nice weekend.
Thank you very much, the organizer and the panelists. Learned so much in this, and I look forward to subsequent meetings. Have a great and refreshing weekend. Bye.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you.